Hey everybody, welcome to DadsDen of Pop Culture. We're going to be talking about a TV show today. Not necessarily an obscure show, but it is a one-season wonder. And that's going to occupy some of the discussion about this show in this video. Why was it a one-season wonder? We're talking about the Green Hornet, 1966, essentially from the same makers of the Batman television show, which in 1966 was doing very well. Batman was on Wednesday and Thursday nights. Fridays were for Green Hornet, but it didn't do as well as Batman. And truth be told, after the second season, Batman was going to have some problems of its own. Budget, declining interest, you get the idea. But let's take a look at some scenes from the first episode of the Green Hornet and maybe try to figure out why it didn't go on to have a second season. Okay, so we begin with a funeral. Is that a bad sign for a one-season wonder? Perhaps it is. Now, we're not sure at this point who's being buried, but we do know that a man has asked District Attorney Scanlon to show up so he could speak to him after the funeral. While the minister is saying his words, another person at the funeral pulls out a strange-looking gun, pulls the trigger. There's no noise. But the man who was to meet D.A. Scanlon falls over dead. Scanlon and a police sergeant rush to see what's happening and discover that the man has indeed been shot. All this while the culprit still looks on. And now we get the opening to the famous strains of, well, sort of, The Flight of the Bumblebee, which, by the way, was also used for the radio show. Another challenge for the Green Hornet. We get narration here from William Dozier, executive producer, just as he did the narration for Batman. His aide, Kato, the opening is a collection of still shots, which makes it a lot easier for me to capture the action, I must say. And here we see Bruce Lee in action, and if, of course, you don't know who Bruce Lee is, I just feel really, really bad for you. And their rolling arsenal, the Black Beauty. Now, the Black Beauty is their car. It's very high-tech. It was created by Kato. And it's also the origin of the Green Hornet's name. Because in earlier incarnations, the car made a sort of weird humming sound, like you would get the humming of hornets or bees or what have you flying around. And so because of the humming sound, he becomes known as the Green Hornet. Now, in this TV show, I don't think I ever heard a humming sound coming from the car. So strangely enough, they kind of dropped that, even though we do get a hornet hum during, well, the opening and the music in a little bit. Okay. On police records, a wanted criminal. So Green Hornet had a long run on the radio, and he got 2 movie serials back in the 1940s, which I've watched, and I'll probably do a review at some point. But the younger audience at this time might not have known who he was in 1966. So these bits are kind of useful for getting the audience up and running. And I kind of like, honestly, when they do something like this, as opposed to having an origin story and taking up a lot of time with that. Now, in this particular episode, we get a little exposition as well to fill in some more blanks, but you get the idea. The Green Hornet is really Britt Reed, owner-publisher of the Daily Sentinel. So, of course, this is Van Williams, not to be confused with Van Heflin or Van Johnson, who's playing Britt Reed and the Green Hornet. He formerly starred in Bourbon Street Beat and Surfside 6, both detective shows. So a good choice to play the character. Although I do wonder, he didn't quite, I think, have the magnetism of Adam West. Now, part of that is Adam West was playing Batman in a sort of serious comical way, much like you get from, say, Leslie Nielsen in the Naked Gun movies or Airplane. which makes it a little easier to be a little over the top without it ruining the show. Now, Green Hornet is not really played for laughs at all, so he really couldn't do that. But it might have, for an audience that was into Batman, moving over to Green Hornet, that might have been a problem for them. Of course, you did have Bruce Lee to help things along. His dual identity, known only to his secretary. Now, this secretary is Lenore Case, played by Wendy Wagner. Really interesting. She worked for a while as an undersea stunt double because she had a lot of experience in diving. She was also a fashion model and, of course, an actress. So a very interesting woman. More interesting than the character she was playing, to be completely honest. And to the district attorney, and this is Frank Scanlon, played by Walter Brooks. Now, this dude did a lot of TV, did a lot of movies. He was in 3 episodes of The Incredible Hulk. He was in an episode of Wild Wild West. Movies, he was in Black Sunday. That's the very famous movie about the terrorists who are going to blow up the Goodyear blimp at the Super Bowl. Absolutely great kind of B-movie classic. He was in The Nude Bomb. It's a Get Smart movie, sort of. Not officially, but I remember that one from childhood. And Jagged Edge, which actually is, a somewhat better remembered and more, I think, respected film. And, of course, we saw him in the scenes at the funeral. And now, to protect the rights and lives of decent citizens, rides the Green Hornet. And it launches into the music. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm going to tell you something right now. The little opening music will burrow into your brain. I would watch an episode and I would be doing that stupid music for probably like 3 or 4 hours later. And I say stupid music only because it was driving me crazy. It's actually very cool, which is why it burrows into your brain. So that line, though, rides the Green Hornet, kind of calls back another great character invented at the same radio station in Detroit where the Green Hornet was invented. And also a character who is Britt Reed's great uncle. And that is, of course, the Lone Ranger. And you can kind of see the similarities between these characters and the concepts. Britt Reed has Kato. The Lone Ranger has Tonto. You have the Black Beauty, the car. You have Silver, the horse. Yeah, you kind of see where they're going. And, of course, also the idea that he's wearing a mask and people think that both of them are maybe bad guys. But, of course, it turns out they're good guys. Now, of course, in the case of the Green Hornet, he never lets people know that he's actually a good guy other than the DA in this one. Now, it was a different character in the radio show. So he does pose as a gangster, and that's partly how he fights crime. Of course, with the Lone Ranger, people figure out that even though he wore a mask, he was not a Western bad man. But anyways, that's the intro. Then we get this image of the Hornet with the lights behind him. Cool, funky music. We got the quick rundown on the characters so they can hit the ground running. And this cool little symbol, at the end. Good opening, not too shabby. You get the stars, names, etc. And in this last phase of the opening, you get, of course, the title. And it ends with the executive producer credit. And now into the episode. The Silent Gun. Not the Naked Gun, the Silent Gun. So this is a shot of the Daily Sentinel building, the newspaper building, which I have to admit looks remarkably fake. They use the shot all the time. I don't know why they didn't just pick a real building and maybe, use movie magic to put the Daily Sentinel on it, but they didn't. But that's okay. It doesn't really hurt the show at all. Ken Pettis wrote this episode. He also wrote for Surfside 6 and Hawaiian Eye, so he has some experience with these sort of lighter detective shows. So in this shot, we are in Britt's office, and we're looking through the window to where his secretary, Casey, sits. And if you look beyond her, I believe if you're looking beyond her, you'll see a sort of a recording studio because the Daily Sentinel does newspaper and it does TV. Very, very progressive of them. We get the credit for Leslie H. Martinson, the director. He directed TV shows from like 1953 to 1988, beginning with a show called City Detective and ending with Small Wonder. Boy. Okay, so he also did a couple Batman episodes, which is probably why he was working on this. Very cool office, though. Very modern. And you get that idea. He's a crusading newspaper publisher. He's modern. He's up to date. Okay, kind of fills you in on the character. That's an important thing for decor. It really is. So Britt is handed the latest edition of the Daily Sentinel with news of the strange murder at the funeral. Britt's disturbed at the mystery surrounding the killing. Nobody heard a gun. Nobody saw a gun flash. Very, very strange. Conversation he's having with his secretary, though, is interrupted by a call from Scanlon. He and Casey are the only two, like they said, who know of him and Cato's dual identities. So Scanlon, he needs help on this case. He's calling in the Green Hornet. And he does have an update on the case. The slug was 17 caliber, an unheard of thing. So he decides he's going to meet with Britt in a half hour. And this gives us a chance to go see Britt's home and some of the more cool stuff that we're going to see over and over again in the series concerning, well, sort of his version of, maybe you could say, the Bat Cave. But before Britt can leave, we're going to meet Mike Axford. Now, Axford is a veteran reporter. He's played by Lloyd Goff or Lloyd Goo. It depends on how, you want to pronounce it in the United States. I think it's Lloyd Goff. Actor who was actually blacklisted in Hollywood, but he was active here in the 60s. So he says he has the murder victim's girlfriend on the phone, Miss Cameron, with information on the murder, and she fears that she is next. For $2,000, she'll give him the story. Britt agrees. She'll meet Axford at the Daily Sentinel at 11 p.m. So Britt's going to go off and meet Scanlon. Axford is going to meet with this woman. Now, Axford is dead set against the Green Hornet. He knows he's a crook, and he's going to catch him someday. And this actually is a holdover. You'll see that in the movie serials. I believe it's in the radio series. It's been a long time since I listened to the radio shows. So part of the point of the first episode, like I said, is introduce the characters and the lay of the land to the audience. And here we see Britt in his normal car entering his garage. And then we see Scanlon at the entrance to this secret passage that he uses to get to Britt's office, so people don't know that he's meeting with this publisher all the time. It's through like an industrial building in this alley. Notice how sweet they are in the background there. That's going to be important. So like I said, they're kind of going for something similar to the Bat Cave. Look, I think they understood some of the elements that made Batman popular, and they're trying to carry them over, and not just completely inventing them whole cloth, but they're trying to carry them over to the Green Hornet to, get people into it. So now Britt in his office starts moving a bunch of books on the shelf, and what that does is it opens the exit to the secret passage that Scanlon has entered, which is basically the fireplace raises up, and this little sort of almost like a little elevator trolley comes down. Frank steps off of it. And so he arrives for the conference, and he finds out that the OSS, so this would be kind of a predecessor of the CIA, had a gun like the one that they suspect is being used in these murders during World War II, but they were all .22 caliber. So it's definitely not one of those. However, Dave Bannister, the murder victim's father, and the first corpse at the funeral, he was a retired gunsmith. Okay, and Britt reveals that Dave Bannister's girlfriend is ready to talk. So they have an idea that maybe a new gun was created that was this weird 17 caliber. While they're talking, Casey calls and lets them know that the gun has been used again, this time for the theft of $5,000 in an elevator. So basically there was like a courier and elevator. The guy falls over dead. Nobody hears a gun. The money is stolen. So they have to find the gun, and they have to find it fast. before it's used in more crimes. Britt tells Kato to go get the Black Beauty ready to roll. Okay, now we're going to get the introduction of really the third big character in the show, which is the Black Beauty. It is a high-tech car, just about as high-tech as the Batmobile, maybe a little less so, maybe a little more realistic. Okay, it's going to do some pretty cool things. It has a drone with a video camera, which I thought was very cool. 70 years ahead of its time. So we get the next big sequence, though, and they will kind of repeat this here and there during the series. Green Hornet and Kato enter the garage. A secret panel is revealed. Kato pushes some buttons. They cause the floor to rotate. So on the floor of the garage, we have Britt's normal car, and these clamps come up and hold on to it, and then the entire floor rotates to reveal the Black Beauty. Very cool sequence. Obviously, at this point, kids are probably digging this show. I think there's already enough, even at this point, to have kids going, "Wow, that's bad." What they said bad back then? Groovy, cool, neato. One of those. That wall poster then opens up. Here comes the car with the music, etc. And like I said, you're going to see that a lot of times during the series. Well, while they're doing that, Axford is meeting with Miss Cameron at the Daily Sentinel. But before she can give him the info, the Green Hornet and Kato arrive. Some gas from his gun puts Mike Axford out. So that's one of his weapons in crime fighting, is a gun that fires gas, knocks people out, sleeping gas. In the serial, it like shoots a pellet that explodes in the person, right next to the person. Here, I think it was more like a jet of gas. Use that a lot in Batman, too. Well, the Green Hornet offers her $4,000 for the information, double what she was going to get from Burt Reed, because he wants the gun. Now she's like, hey, the gun gets in your hands. That's even worse than who has it right now. But he guarantees her safety if she spills, because somebody might be gunning for her right now. And so she does spill. Joe Renner killed Dave Bannister. Renner works for a crime boss named Al Trump. Now, Bannister got involved with him to make enough money so that these two could get married. He got involved with gambling and then traded the gun to Trump to get out of his IOUs. So this is the main theme in Green Hornet. Rather than crazy supervillains like we got in Batman, we have shady underworld types for the most part. Now, sadly, they were not reoccurring characters. Batman, we got Joker, Catwoman, Penguin, Riddler, right? And some others as well, colorful and reoccurring. None of these are reoccurring characters in Green Hornet. That might have actually helped if there had been a sort of kingpin of crime that he was going up again, not maybe every episode, but often, or at least a guy who had his fingers in all these pies and we're trying to discover who he is. That might have given it a little oomph. That might have helped it. And also, if you have special guest villains like you did in Batman, that helped goose the ratings for Batman. Okay. But the main thing is, at this point, the overall mystery is already solved. We know who did it, and where to find them. And this is often a weak point in detective type shows with a 30-minute time slot. It would be a problem for Batman in its third season. In fact, one of the writers on Batman had even said that. We had a lot of characters. They even had added Batgirl. We got to give them all dialogue, and it's like you're trying to fit all this stuff in. So you had to go for more simple plots, not as mysterious. One of the few shows I've seen that really did it well was Peter Gunn. Half-hour time slot, feels like you're getting more. Incredible show. You should go watch it for sure. Well, at any rate, Green Hornet and Kato know where to go. So they go to the apartment building Renner lives in. They're up on the 6th floor. They're looking through the window. But they're not seeing Renner leave his apartment. No, those are guys that work for Big Dan Carley, another crime boss. Okay, well, they climbed through the window to check out Renner's apartment. And they find him dead. Bum, bum, bum. A little bit of a twist. But I think this points to, again, a problem this show is going to have in finding an audience. You get gangsters, you get killings, you get a jazzy score. Great for adults. Hey, not that different than you got in Peter Gunn, like I had mentioned. But you also get secret identities, silent guns, gas guns, etc. Not so great for adults, especially during that period. Works for Gen X adults, works for millennial adults. Didn't necessarily work for boomer adults, or even, well, at this point, we're probably talking, and we're actually talking the great, generation, the guys who fought World War II. Not as into that stuff as grown-ups, right? I'm not saying every person. Obviously, they were grown-up fans of even like the Golden Age comic books, but for the most part, stuff like that might have turned them off from the show. Batman succeeded by pulling in kids and adults, right? Because it was an action comedy and over the top enough to pull adults in. And I know that sounds funny, right? But the kids are down. There's fist fights. There's a Batmobile. There's all sorts of crazy kids. I was a kid. I loved that stuff when I first saw it. Okay. I think for adults, though, they liked the sort of tongue-in-cheek humor, the satire, that kind of stuff that, frankly, flew over our heads as kids. But I think that's what they enjoyed. And with Green Hornet, it's almost not silly enough that adults can kind of let their guard down and enjoy some of those other elements of the show. And I should also mention, it had pretty damn tough competition. Even for the kid market. Wild Wild West was on opposite it on CBS. Tarzan was on opposite on NBC with the great Ron Ely. And it was a top 30 show that season. So that's another problem. 1966 was packed to the gills with pop culture juggernauts they were getting remakes not only in the 80s, but also the 90s and the 2000s. They're hitting toys still. You'd be amazed. 66, and I'm gonna do a show on this at some point, looking at from like 65 to 67. Unbelievable array of TV shows came out. So it was a tough market to find a spot in. So that might have been another issue that Green Hornet had. Well, when it's looking bad for Green Hornet, it gets worse. Trump busts in with a couple thugs and thinks that they're the two that have killed Renner. Remember, everybody thinks he's a gangster. But Hornet manages to cause a distraction because guns are useless in old TV shows. And fisticuffs are the result. And we do finally get to see Bruce Lee in action here, which is nice. The downside, though, to Bruce Lee in this show is he's just too damn good. I mean, it's fun to watch what he's doing. And the way he's moving it was new to audiences at the time. But there's only one episode where he's really challenged as far as the martial arts go, as opposed to, say, a Bruce Lee movie where, okay, yeah, there's going to be scenes where he's just beating the crap out of the little dudes, but he's always got the big guy that he's got to take on at some point. You don't get that so much in the show. But again, I think it was probably just blowing people's minds the way he moved. And it is a really, really fun part of the show. So Trump is now under the lamp. Some gentle persuasion from Kato, gets him to admit that he has the gun. Green Hornet wants it, and so does Carly. And Carly's going to kill until he gets it. Green Hornet offers to negotiate with him for a cut of the sale. So I'll be the go-between for you guys. We'll make that sale. I get a cut. All right, he's playing up the gangster angle. So Green Hornet and Kato go to Carly's. They enter in their customary way through the window. Kato kicking ass all along, tossing his throwing darts. Again, very cool stuff. This show, perfect for kids. It had to have had the kid audience, unless they were watching Tarzan or Wild Wild West, like I said. So under the guise of negotiations, Green Hornet sets up a demonstration of the gun, a trap for Trump and Carly. But Carly makes a call to Trump when Green Hornet leaves. A double cross. All right. Well, no, it's a triple cross because the Hornet bugged Carly's office and is listening in. So he's a step ahead of them. He coordinates with Scanlan, but he's got to go through alone to make it work. The whole police can't bust in all at once. So we next see the Hornet in a car with Trump and Carly, and then Kato is in the Black Beauty, and so we're kind of cut in between. He's waiting for a signal. When the signal is given, he roars off to intercept with the police in pursuit of Kato. So Kato's listening to the police radio as he's chased, and then he loses them pretty darn easily, really, just kind of into an alley and waits and then goes and leaves. But so it's not a great car chase. But, they just had a backlot to work with. You don't get a lot of great car chases with the Batmobile either. And by the way, it's same backlots, so you will recognize a lot of stuff from both TV shows. So at the demonstration place, Hornet positions himself with his back against the wall as Trump pulls out the silent gun. Not a euphemism, thank God. Carly then pretends to take a shot as a test, but he turns the gun on Green Hornet, who's ready for it. He escapes into the parking garage, killing the lights. Carly and Trump begin hunting for him everywhere amid all those beautiful old cars. So we get a bunch of people sneaking around in the dark, interspersed with Kato driving the Black Beauty, he's trying to get there in time. The Hornet manages to take Trump out with a grease gun and a sock to the jaw, which brings Carly running. Looks bleak for our hero, but Kato finally shows up and with the press of a button, opens the rocket launchers on the front of the Black Beauty. Car with rocket launchers. Yes, kids are going to love this show. Man, if only we got some toys. There'd be some awesome vintage toys floating out there, like from Mego or whoever. Oh, it's a shame. Well, he blasts open the door of the parking garage, which distracts Carly. And so Green Hornet ducks out of the way. Carly fires the silent gun, hitting a steam pipe, which bursts open in his face. Time to call Scanlan to pick up the culprits. As Kato adds, one greased and one parboiled. Very flippant about the horrible burns that poor man. No, actually, he's a bad guy. That's what you get. Come on. So we roll the end credits, a Greenway production based on the popular radio dramas of the Green Hornet, Incorporated, created by George W. Trendle. And we get a credit here for Dan Carly, Lloyd Bachman, who was in everything back in the day and often as a bad guy. William Self in charge of production for 20th Century Fox Television Incorporated. All right, so what do you got with this one season wonder? Well, it's fun and it's entertaining, right? But it's not over the top like Batman. I think ultimately that's probably what hurt it. I think it probably pulled in a kid audience, and there are still people devoted to this show, absolutely devoted to this show to this day who saw it as kids. I have a feeling it just didn't pull in the adult audience the same way. I could see grown-ups wanting to watch maybe Wild Wild West, which was a little campier, or maybe Tarzan, something else they grew up on. And it's kind of funny, right? Green Hornet, Tarzan, Batman, a lot of stuff from the generation before, just like kind of we're doing now. The real tragedy of the Green Hornet is that you can't really find it on physical media. It's had the same issues with rights that, say, Batman did. It took a long time to get Batman on DVD. Now, it has shown up on TV from time to time, and you can find it on YouTube. Basically, somebody recorded it off of TV. You can find people selling it on discs, but they just burned them themselves. No idea what the quality is. So hopefully someday we'll get really, really nice copies of this, like on DVD or Blu-ray or 4K or whatever, but just nicely cleaned up. It's a shame. It's Bruce Lee's kind of introduction to America. It really deserves to be better preserved. But what can you do? Welcome to the wonderful world of legal rights of different IPs. All right. Well, that'll do it for the Green Hornet. Fun show. If you've never watched it, you should really go try to find it. Check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. Might want to watch the movie serials. Might want to listen to the radio shows as well. It's all good stuff. Just fun, old-fashioned crime-fighting adventure. And that's what they delivered. They didn't quite find the audience that they needed to. All right. Well, that'll do it for this review of the Green Hornet. Thumbs up from me. Sadly, it just didn't make it with a bigger audience. Let me know what you think in the comments if you're a big fan of the show, or if you got your own ideas about why it didn't pick up a second season. I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, maybe think of subscribing, maybe share with a friend. That'd be very cool. But in the meantime, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. And I will see you hopefully again soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.